Hi, I'm Molly Foster. I teach visual arts at Hollymead Elementary School in Charlottesville, Virginia. I've been teaching art here for about 8 years, and I've been teaching for almost 20 years total. I was a classroom teacher before I became an art teacher, and then I was an instructional coach for a couple of years when I decided to go back to the classroom to be an art teacher, and I haven't turned back ever since. So our school is an autism-based school. We have about 450 students, and we also have an arts integration team here. Our team consists of the music teacher, the gifted teacher, the librarian, which is also known as the media specialist in our county, and then me, the visual arts teacher. In this session, I will be sharing out a lesson that we did with third graders last year. It's a lesson that involves puppet making and language arts as the two components that we are using as an arts integration lesson. I'll be sharing out the design process that we used both with the students and as teachers ourselves this year, and also how we have changed the lesson based on feedback we got from students and our own reflection. I will also be sharing resources that I've created and assessment tools to use throughout this process. And of course, you'll get to see some of the amazing puppets and the puppet shows that these students created. This year, we included their own creation of a fable. And so students explored fables at the beginning of this lesson. They learned about the moral part being a major part of what a fable is. Then they learned about script writing and how to write a script and include emotions in a script, and that was a whole nother lesson. Then they each took a part from that fable and they designed and created their puppet to go with that part. After they created their puppets, they then recorded with the music teacher an interlude to go with their performance, and then they recorded their lines just like last year, but then we changed it up a little bit and we did a video recording of their whole performance with editing in their lines and the music, so that it wasn't done in front of a live audience this year, but that it was compiled into a 45-minute long video of all of their shows together. And so we're actually going to be sharing that with the students this week, and we're excited to get their reactions and their thoughts and feedback on how they felt that their performance went now that they get to see themselves on the big screen. The other difference is that we added a component of the design process this year that was not included in last year's lesson. I'm curious to know if you use a reflection process right now, and how well has it been going? I'm going to be sharing out the design process and how and why I use it in my classroom and with arts integration units. It's a very effective tool that I think that you will find very helpful in any lesson and even in your own teaching practice. First, I'm going to share the design process. This is what I used in the fall to share with the students prior to this lesson. I use it in many different ways, as I will share into more detail later on in this session. But I wanted to first share the video I made for my students so that they would have an understanding of the design process before we went into this project. The first stage is ask. Ask yourself, what inspires me? What tools can I use? What materials are available? What am I excited to create today? And what theme should I show? Then you would begin imagining, what could my art look like? What would a sketch of my idea look like? Next, I would begin the design stage. I would draw my sketch, list or gather my tools and materials, and then I would get to create next. That means I would be getting to work making my art. And then I could get some feedback from my friends and from my teachers. And then I could evaluate my work. That's a fancy word for checking it through and checking it over to make sure it has everything that you want included. You might ask yourself, am I proud of my work? Did I stick to my plan? And then I could refine it, make changes to it, and go back to the design stage and create and evaluate. Or then maybe I'd be ready to share my work out, either with my classmates or the world. So we did this lesson with third graders and then again with the same group of students in fourth grade, and we made a lot of changes by using the evaluate portion of the design process. And the reason why we made changes was that we noticed that the puppets didn't really come out as craftsman-like as we wanted to. The quality just wasn't there. And so we decided that we would take a look at using the whole design process as a tool, and we shared that with the students prior to the lesson this year, and we also included a sketch of their plan for creating a puppet, which was super helpful to refer back to for us to take a look at when they were planning out and working. And the puppets turned out much better this year because of it. The quality of the materials was higher, and we also had a list of what the students actually wanted to use and needed. So we had that prior to the start of the lesson, which was great because then we could purchase and gather all the materials that the students requested. And so the puppets came out much better, and we did the same thing in the whole reflection process for the entire unit, which has been really great to look through all of the evaluations that the students made on each stage of the process. The way I came about using the design process is that I am a choice-based art teacher, and so I have centers in my room, and I wanted the students to be held accountable for what stage they were in the design process, and to have a guideline or a tool to refer back to when they're working, so that they do have a plan before they get started, and if they're in the middle of their plan, what is the next step for them to do. And so my goal this year as a teacher has been to have students use a design process as part of their learning, and that they can reflect on and use that tool when they are working. Next, we will watch both this year's and last year's clips of the puppet shows.
The sky is falling! The sky is falling! We must tell the president! Quack, quack, let's go! It was a warm spring day on the soccer field, and the red team were losing by 11 to the blue team. I cannot believe we're losing by 11. Yeah, we're winning, haha. Yeah, we good, yeah. Claire's not passing, so we're losing by 11.
Now that you've had a chance to see a clip from last year's puppet show and this year's, I bet you can notice that the quality of the puppets were very different. The higher quality puppets from this year showed, and I believe it was due in part to the design process being included, where the students sketched out what exactly they wanted to create, and then they listed exactly the materials they would need to create their puppets. They also felt like using the fables they wrote helped them to design their puppets to make them more original, and they were given a little bit more time as well. During students' work time, teachers would go around and give the students feedback while they were working, and have them also refer back to their plan so that they could make sure they were following their plan or making changes if they didn't see that their plan was turning out the way they wanted it to. So this was a very interactive process where teachers were involved in walking around and giving the students more information that might help them while they were creating. We got a lot of valuable feedback from the students on the reflection sheet that they filled out, including information on how well their group worked together, that they really enjoyed having all the materials ready to go instead of either not having materials that they required or requested, or that they also felt like they needed either more time or that the time was just right for them. So it was really great to read that feedback, and a lot of them said that everything went really well. Some of them said that they really wished that the fable writing part went a little smoother with their group, because there are 4 people in a group a lot of the times. There's a lot of voices to be heard, so that was a little bit challenging for some of our students, but we got that feedback, so we were able to talk to them about it afterwards.
Hi girls, I'm home with a little treat. Pizza. Sure, I'll take it. No! Well, that's our story. We hope you enjoy it. And our motto was, don't take things from strangers.
So the puppet making part was fun. I like that since we created our own skits, we could go a lot farther with the puppets, and also since we had knowledge from last year and we received new, more free-form instructions, it was easier to create a puppet that fit your needs.
Now that you've heard the whole session on puppet making and how I've used the design process in this arts integration lesson, how could you use the design process in your classroom and your teaching methods? Take a moment to pause and think about, if you're currently using it, how can you assess that your students are using each stage of the design process? And if you're not using it, how could you begin using it? Now you will pause the video for about 2 minutes to draw out a quick sketch of a puppet that you would like to create. It can be from a favorite fable of yours or a character from any story. Okay, now let's try out using the design process. Instead of just sketching out the puppet on a piece of paper, I want you to pause this video and print out the sketching puppet form that I have included in the resources and handouts for this session. Then we're going to use that to sketch out our puppet, and please list all the materials that you will need, right down to how many buttons, how much yarn you might need for hair, and any other details, being specific about the materials you've requested. Hopefully you'll notice that the sketching and design form gives the person who is creating their puppet more information, more details, and gives them a reference point to go back to when they are creating their art. Now, compare both sketches that you drew out for your puppets and take a look at which one has more information that will be useful for the person who is creating the puppet and for the teachers who are gathering the materials. We noticed a huge difference between our students' designs last year and this year. Just using that design form really helps students include lots of details that they might have forgotten and held them accountable for everything that they were going to need and collect when they were designing and laying out everything that they would need to create their puppet. Thank you for watching my session. I hope you gained some new information and that you are inspired to try out the design process in some form or fashion with your students. and possibly do some puppet making. If you need to reach me for any questions or comments, my email is fosterartforkids@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at fosterartforkids for all things art, arts integration, and choice-based art related.